Hello and welcome back to the How to Rune series. Today we're talking about 3 popular counterpicks in RTA. It should be noted that this video is being recorded in the middle of RTA Season 29. So, I don't know if for some reason these monsters aren't relevant in the future, which I find extremely unlikely. Just keep that in mind. The first monster we're going to talk about today is Juno the Fire Oracle. Juno is one of those monsters that's had an interesting career in Summoner's War. She used to be really bad, only cleansing if she had at least 2 debuffs on her at the start of her turn. That is no longer the case. Now she auto cleanses and heals your team at the start of her turn. She also gets a speed buff on whenever she's applied with a debuff, so that means she's going to make it to her next turn faster. Couple that with turn cycling on skill 1, as well as a strip on skill 2, this monster is just outstanding. So how do you rune her? First of all, let's talk sets. Typically speaking, you're going to want to go towards Despair as your main set and Revenge as your offset. Having a first skill with multi-hit that also turn cycles you is a pretty good argument for counterattacking, and we want people to think twice anytime they target her, so Revenge is a natural fit. Now, Despair is great too, because when you're counterattacking and also have an AoE that you'll use situationally, you're going to want to see if you can get a few lucky Despair stunts. It also turns her into just a solo champion. Like, this monster can solo things that it has no business soloing, because it's almost like it has a stun baked into skill 1. Can solo pretty much anything except for like Haegang and maybe Masha and maybe Camilla, but yeah. For your 2, 4, and 6 slots, you'll want to aim for speed, crit rate, and HP. Crit rate is important because you only gain attack bar on skill 1 if you crit. Now, if you're one of those few who can make it to 100% or close to 100% crit rate without having a crit rate slot 4, you can of course go for crit damage. But I wouldn't say that there's too much pressure on that, because additional damage is what really makes this monster shine. And for that, we're going to want to turn over to the artifacts. Here's what you should prioritize in terms of sub-properties for your artifacts. First of all, it's every kind of additional damage you can get your hands on. Second, Juno really appreciates extra accuracy on her skill 2. And finally, it's damage reduction from some of her popular counters. Earlier I joked about Masha. Well, Masha is kind of the natural predator to Juno. Juno is very rarely built on will. I would borderline say never, because, I mean, why would you? In theory, you want her to be applied with debuffs so she can heal your team. Well, that ends up just putting her in the perfect state for Masha to capitalize on that with her skill 2, apply defense break, and just take her down on turn 1. I'm not saying we tech against that, but I am saying that like damage reduction from fire monsters, it sounds pretty cool. But it's definitely the like 3rd priority. Additionals, accuracy, damage reduction. Cool? Cool. Now, when do you pick a Juno? Juno is a popular pick when you see something that's trying to apply a lot of debuffs. Something like a Shizuka fits this bill perfectly, because Shizuka is going to try to put a ton of debuffs on your team, but also buff her and her own team. So Juno is right there to strip it with skill 2 and turn it all into dots. She'll just make that team look like they're fresh out of TOA. Let's talk about your primary stat focuses for Juno. First of all, it's HP, speed, and crit rate. You might have gathered this just based on the 2, 4, 6 slots, to which I would say, very astute observation. You're exactly right. You want her to be tanky enough to stick around and not die immediately when she has tons of debuffs on her. Speed, so that way you're not getting left behind, even though she does have light turn cycling on skill 1, and then crit rate, so you are getting that attack bar. Her only secondary stat priority is accuracy. You're just going to want to remember to splash a little bit of it so that she can land that strip semi-reliably. Even though someone might think that crit damage is something you want to aim for with Juno, she's really supplemented by additional damage in her artifacts. By the way, thank you so much to Stoic. This is his Juno. In fact, each one of the stat blocks that you'll be seeing today belongs to him. But these are currently how he builds his monsters. Again, this is RTA Season 29, so approximately late May 2024. These, just like everything else, is subject to change. This disclaimer is brought to you by Stoic. Our second popular counterpick that we're going to be talking about today is Leo, the Wind Dragon Knight, who's currently the 2nd most picked monster in the Choose an F5 event. There's even an animation about that event for the 10th year anniversary that focuses on Leo. The dude is the best, and here's why. Leo's passive Eye of the Storm sets everyone's speed to his. It also makes it so that every time he attacks, he's going to try to decrease attack bar. So on paper, that skill might not sound absolutely incredible, but it is. If you think of every monster that has speed scaling damage, Leo can function as a counter to them. You also have the opportunity to throw off comps that are notably trying to outspeed you. You can even push their attack bar booster to be last in the attack order, because even if you just reduce their attack bar with Leo's hit, that means they're guaranteed to move after everybody else, so long as there's no more attack bar manipulation there. And let me tell you, there's no greater feeling than pushing the attack buff monster behind the damage dealer. So, how do you rune him? There are two common builds for Leo that we're going to talk about. First, it's the tried and true Violent. When you're guaranteed turn 1 proccing into additional damage, seems pretty great. Alternatively, you could put him on Vampire. This is going to give him a little bit more solo potential because he's now able to sustain himself. And if you happen to get an ignore defense torrent down the line, you're going to be at full health and the other person's going to be not with us anymore. Now, what's great about Leo is that there's a little bit of flexibility in the offset. Notably, one set of will doesn't do anything with Leo. Because he's guaranteed to go first, you're going to burn through that turn of immunity really fast. There are some niche cases where double will actually work on Leo. Sometimes it's nice to have that little extra bit of protection to make sure that you have at least one turn of immunity going into the game. And let's face it, nobody expects will on Leo. That's just not something that's done. So I'm not saying that's the build. I'm just saying it could be funny. Alternatively, you could put him on Nemesis, so that way as he takes damage, he's going to be gaining attack bar. I mean, you could even put him on Fight, so he's giving everybody attack. That sounds cool. I've also seen Revenge on Leo. The most important part about Leo might inform the way that you rune him. Meaning, unless you're doing like some weird thing where you try to make Leo super fast, so that way you buff the speed of all your other monsters. I don't know what you're doing. Some people are out there doing weird stuff with Leo. If you're going for a traditional Leo build, you'll want to rune him as close to 0 speed as possible. And that can prove to be a little difficult because as Summoners War players, we've been trained to keep runes with speed on them. For your 2, 4, and 6 slots, I would recommend going with attack, crit damage, HP for a more bruiser-focused Leo. For your artifacts, you can prioritize substats that reduce damage taken and increase your crit damage. It also doesn't hurt to increase accuracy on skill 3 because you're probably not going to prioritize accuracy much otherwise, which is a great segue into the primary stats for Leo. Primary stat to focus on: speed, but not in the way that you'd normally think. Speed is your #1 priority, namely getting him close to 0 speed. So, I don't know, have fun with that one. Next, equal parts HP and defense. Need him to be a little bit tanky if you want him on a bruiser build. If you're going for a glass cannon Leo, then you can just, I don't know, you can just ignore this. Finally, there's crit rate and crit damage. Leo is mostly there for his passive, but you don't want him to just be a passive with legs like Mephisto. You want him to be contributing to your damage. And crit rate and crit damage are a great way to do that. I know this sounds like a lot of stats to focus on, but one thing that is really cool about Leo is that normally you'd have to dedicate some of your rune efficiency to speed. With Leo, you don't really have to do that. So you can almost think of it as having one extra substat slot to play with on Leo than you would have with anybody else. Before we get to our last monster, I just want to talk about a monster that I'm not going to talk about. I'm sure a lot of people clicked on this video and thought that Haegang, the Water Art Master, might be included. The fact of the matter is, Haegang's pretty boring when it comes to runing. For him, you really just rune him fast and on Despair. That's it. So you could go speed, a tanky stat, accuracy, and then you're good to go. Or, you know, speed, HP. Did I accidentally just talk about him? The only weird thing that I would say some people have played with is Revenge with Haegang. But like, your results may vary. I really don't see why you wouldn't just put him on Will, because you want him to be able to get stripped and then proc his own passive. So to me, Despair Will, speed HP, whatever, Despair. Boom, you've ruined Haegang. Okay, so this is officially 4 popular counterpicks in RTA. You're welcome. The real number 3 is Douglas, the Fire Striker. Douglas's passive says that he imposes a chance to glance that scales up to a coin flip, and it depends on the difference between your and their attack power. Then, if they glance, he'll remove a debuff from himself and then counterattack with his skill 2, which has a chance to proc his skill 1. So you can essentially just get some crazy damage just from sitting there. The main point of this, we need to rune him on attack. Very high attack, and preferably on Vampire. Primary stats to focus on: attack. We want to kill people. We'll take that as a confession. You also want crit rate and crit damage. And finally, enough HP to not die immediately. That's the Douglas difference. For your artifacts, get attack as the main property, and look for substats to enhance the crit damage that you're presumably already doing. If you want to look for accuracy there too, he does have a brand on skill too, so that can be helpful. And counterattack damage is a no-brainer there too. Douglas is an incredibly fun monster because he kind of makes people think differently about how they bring AoE. If you see someone bringing things like the Wind Robo, Chung Pung, etc., you can oftentimes just slam down a Douglas to have him soak up the ban. And sometimes just getting your other guaranteed 4 monsters is worth it. Or if they're just like bold enough to let the Douglas through, then you might even get a free win. The prevalence of Douglas has also changed the way that people have ruined their Moor, the Water Striker. Gone are the days that you can get away with a low attack Moor. Now people ruin him on attack to counter his own brother. Douglas also has a 33% attack power lead, so, you know, if you need more damage, you can do that. I have heard of people running Douglas on a set of Revenge just to get that extra chance, but to me, it's a little bit redundant. I would much rather either have him on a set of Will or on just anything that gets in the most attack. With him, it's more than fine to go Vampire Broken, as long as it gets you the most stats. So there we go, those are 3 of the most popular counterpicks in RTA and how to rune them. Let me know if you have any requests for other monsters, and if you want me to do more of these, I will do so. Have a great day, everybody. See you next time.